Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of Digital and Creative Media Works, where each week we take something from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
My name is Ben.
And Ben, it's a regular week. We're back. We're healthy.
There's no topic. It's just a regular week.
Well, there is a topic.
Oh, there is a topic?
I've
Okay.
planned the month.
Okay, so
don't you be
it's
thinking...
not that regular a week.
No,
then.
but in the sense that like we're both here and neither of us are terribly
right.
sick
Yeah.
like we were last week. But you know what I figured is this month I kind of was like. Turned out a lot of weird horror things are coming out back to back. This week we're sort of talking about something that's kind of vaguely horror. Next week we're doing sort of Black Mirror, so that'll be kind of horror-ish.
Yep.
So there's some spooky stuff. So we were like, why not pick the month that isn't Halloween to do it in?
Absolutely. Welcome to the Halloween in June.
Welcome to Halloween in June. The name of my indie band.
Halloween in June and then Christmas in July.
That's right. That's how we're rocking and
rolling. We got that
mid-year
holiday.
Dude, we could legitimately do like only Christmas themed stuff in July. That'd be quite
absolutely.
fun. But I was like, like a lot of the things that are coming out pretty much purely exist off dramatic tension. So I figured like that would be kind of a fun theme for this month is tension.
All right.
Kind of looking at how things construct that. So this week I figured to kick it off, why not talk about something that no one's thought about in a long time? Is this week we're talking about the tension of Pitch Black.
Tension.
Can we talk quickly about the fact that
this film?
So for those of you uninitiated, this is a Riddick film. So the Vin Diesel.
This is the Riddick film.
But
this
it's
is the
first one. But then, okay, so here's what's confusing, right? So the Chronicles of Riddick, this trilogy. There's Pitch Black, the Chronicles of Riddick, and then Riddick.
But then there's also the games called the Chronicles of Riddick, which are incredible,
but not
to the
related.
point where a lot of people consider them canon just because they're really good. But yeah, they're completely different.
But okay, so the weird thing is, if you watch the director's cut of this film, it's supposed to be a sequel to Chronicles of Riddick.
So that's interesting because
so weird.
In my brief sort of research I did on this film, which is I watched a YouTube video about it just to see what people were saying. They were watching the director's cut, which has extra.
It's like a flashback at the start.
Yeah, and there's extra like dialogue from Riddick and the guy who's like his handler.
Yeah.
Like explaining the world, which they just cut out because it's unnecessary if you're just watching this film. Yeah, it's insane.
It's very weird.
It's very weird.
Because it was ostensibly the first one. It came out in 2000. It's a science fiction horror that's co-written and directed by David Toy and stars Vin Diesel. Toy's writing is primarily...
A bunch of Australians.
Yeah, it was weird.
Just like 3 Australians. Wow.
For reference, Toy's writing was primarily science fiction and horror, including Warlock, an early draft of Alien 3, and Waterworld. So some of the kind of intersections of those things.
Alien 3.
Yeah.
The one that doesn't exist.
Early draft is what that says. Which is kind of curious. Like, I think that a lot of his work, he's primarily done Riddick. That's been his main thing.
Yeah.
This film is so weird, though.
It's so fucking weird.
So excited to get into it. Okay, let's do the summary quickly. Before we do that, What did you think of it going into it? Obviously, we both kind of remember watching it vaguely, but
yeah,
what do you reckon?
I don't think I'd seen it before, but I'd seen stuff about it. And it was when you were like, oh, we're watching Pitch Black, I was like, I don't know what that film is. And then even when I saw like the thing on Netflix, I was like the little icon, I was like, I still don't really know. I was like, it's a Vin Diesel film? I'm like, oh, okay. And I started watching it, and then like probably like 5 minutes in when they show him like in the chains with like the thing over his eyes, I was like, oh, it's the Riddick film. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I know what this film is.
It's weird. Like, I feel like everyone has seen this and no one remembers it.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, it's just one of those films, I feel.
It's like, yeah, it's just a weird one.
So strange. I saw it when it first kind of came out on DVD, so like 2000 kind of,
God,
that gives you an
DVD.
idea. And then sort of after that, when I rewatched the other Riddick films, I came back to this one and I was like, oh, this is the best one. Because
I haven't seen the others. That's the thing. I've only seen this one.
Chronicles of Riddick is a lot. Like, it's this high concept sci-fi action thriller. This is, and like Riddick is not alien enough, whereas this one is like the right balance, I think.
Right.
But I'll kind of touch on that a bit later. So let's get through the summary because it is quite brief. En route to its destination, the ship Hunter Gratzner, transporting the dangerous criminal Richard B. Riddick, is struck by debris, killing the captain and causing the crew to make a landing on the closest planet. The survivors of the crash/landing explore the surroundings of the world with 3 suns that appears to be in perpetual daylight. Survivors start to disappear, and Riddick is obviously immediately blamed. When Fry discovers lethal light-sensitive monsters, John offers Riddick a deal. Help them survive and escape, and Riddick will go free. As they investigate the planet further, it becomes clear that an eclipse is approaching, which will allow the creatures to hunt above ground. The crew returns to the ship with the power cells they need as darkness falls. Struggling against the creatures and all odds, Jack gets away and Riddick survives to fight another day. Credits.
You just skimmed over the just a good chunk of this film.
Well, a lot of it's very detail orientated because it is a
Yeah,
thriller, so
it
it's
is.
like if I got stuck in that, I'd pretty much be retelling you the whole film.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um,
It's one of those films where not a lot happens. Like when they're like, oh, we need to get the power cells, and then we'll get off this thing. I like checked the time, and I was like, we're like 20 minutes in. They've already got a solution. What's
Yeah.
the rest of the film?
The rest of the film is the interpersonal drama of getting there. Yeah, which I kind of love. It was one of the things that kind of trips me out is that Toy talks about it a lot. Like when he talks about it now, he's like, I think it was really successful because it was edgy. And I'm like, was it?
I don't think it's that
Like
edgy.
even for early 2000s, it wasn't that edgy. I don't
No,
think.
it's quite subdued for early 2000s. It's got
Like tonally, it's quite edgy in that I mean, we'll get to Riddick in a minute, but film-wise,
I think-
gore-wise, even subject matter, it didn't feel very edgy.
I think most of the edge really just comes from like Riddick's aesthetic. Like he's like
a D&D character.
yeah, and he's a very like punk rock kind of like and when what's her name, the girl is pretending to be a boy, we
Jack.
need some Jack. But like even when she's like emulating his look, it's like a very punk rock kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some character names
Okay, you
up.
do some character names. Yeah, I guess like one of the reasons that he justifies it as being edgy is that they kill a lot of named sympathetic characters without really giving too much of a shit. I think now watching it, I'm so used to it because of Game of Thrones and Walking Dead that doesn't even flag to me as weird when it's like, oh yeah, that character that you're supposed to care about gets murdered. But I think at the time that might have been quite controversial. Because I remember, at the time, you remember horror films and thrillers and stuff where it's like all the people you care about always survived.
Yeah, or like you can kind of tell who's gonna die just by
Based
like
on
the
how they're
start of the
cast.
film. Yeah.
I don't get that with this because of the weird eclectic cast and the fact they're mostly Australian. Also, most of the people in all of the Riddick films are Australian for reasons unknown.
Well, a lot of people are Australian in this film because it was filmed in South Australia.
Right.
It was filmed in the same place the first Mad Max film was
Which
filmed.
makes sense the more you think about it.
Yeah, the director of photography is the same guy, I'm pretty sure,
Oh,
as the first
I
Mad
know that.
Max.
Okay.
Because they were just like, we don't know how to like logistically film here because this is literally like hell on earth.
This is a desert.
So
Please
like,
help.
can you help us, Mr. Mad Max boy?
And he was
he's
like,
like,
yeah,
sure.
yeah, dude.
Only if you cast a bunch of Australians.
Only if
So
you-
like, it's the whole like Adelaide thing. If you
Yeah.
film in South Australia, you got to have
What's because like
a
the
certain number of
the
Australian
Actors
people.
Guild. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how do they have that
If
union?
they have a certain number of people, certain number of Australians on the team overall, and they were just like, oh, just get a bunch of actors then.
I did not know that. Well, there you go. Ben coming at us with the facts.
Only vague idea of the facts.
only vague ideas that
Unconfirmed vague
that
ideas
are
of the facts.
unprovable by their vagueness.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have like a lot of meta readings for this film, but I think before we get into that, like I just want to talk about Riddick as a character. So
Right.
having watched the other Riddick films a few times, I'm really confused by what the fuck this series is because Riddick is like the perfect.
It's like the perfect Andy.
Well, like
hero,
he seems to
right?
have, or not even, because he doesn't really seem to have any moral beliefs. Like he neither extols good nor evil. He just kind of is. Like for me, he's the true consistent moral emergence. He's like the from the fabric of the universe is this perfect moral zero
right.
of a person. Like he doesn't seem to, like he can sympathize with people, but he seems to have no moral compass whatsoever because he like not even that like. You know, he's like amoral and he's like, cool. Just that he seems to be not affected by the concept of morality in any way.
Well, I think it kind of lends, at least in this film, in like an insular sense, and I assume the other films were on this. But in this film, he's very like animalistic, and he even says it at the start of the film. He's just like, "Oh, they say when you're in cryo, like the only parts of you that are awake are like the animalistic parts of you, and that's why I'm still awake." You're like, "Okay, that's kind of lame, but whatever."
But a cool-
whatever. It's
but
c-
cool for 2000s.
cool guy, but like it's
Yeah.
kind of dumb. But I guess throughout the film, he's very, like he doesn't have, his goals are really just like don't die, and like, he understands like human motivations at a very baseline level.
Yeah.
Like the idea of just like, this guy's going to hand me in for money, therefore he's a threat. And it's like,
Yeah.
he's not even going to attempt to make any plays with him. He's just going to be like, when they're walking together through the canyon or approaching the canyon, he's like, oh, we could kill the girl and use her as bait. He's just like, good idea to use someone as bait. but I'm just going to use you because I'm going to have to kill you anyway.
Yeah.
So I may as well do it now.
Yeah,
and
it's
then they
very-
just kind of scrap for a bit.
It's just kind of like, I don't know. And the other films don't ruin this. He's always like this.
Okay.
He never gets a shred of humanity.
Okay.
It's so weird.
But I don't think it's humanity. I think it's
Yeah, wrong.
brains, like being smart.
Well, not even that.
Not even smart, just being like tricky.
Yeah,
Like,
there's no cunning to him because he doesn't need it because he's just capable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's they don't portray him as like this trickster Loki kind of character. He's just strong. He knows what to do in most situations.
Because he always knows what he wants. He doesn't do what we all do, which is second guess and be like, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? He's like, well, I know what I need, so I'm going to make it happen.
do it.
I want to read you a quote from Richard Herbert, where he talks about this is in Overthinking It. It's quite a long one, so stay with me. I think for me, this totally isolates and articulates what I think about this, like, kind of the thesis of this film is. So,
Right.
Quote, most humans show a kind of weak moral and ethical emergence. Our moral macroscopic behavior can be somewhat explained by the interactions of our moral microscopic components, e.g., Jane's approval of corporal punishment may be due to the dynamic interaction between a fundamentalist Christian church and a home environment that reinforces those beliefs. As Jane's initial microscopic conditions change or are perturbed, her macroscopic conditions are affected too. For instance, if Jane is accepted into a liberal arts college and faces a sudden influx of dissenting opinions, then her initial approval of corporal punishment may be destabilized, eventually forming a new macroscopic moral state, perhaps conditioning approval or outright disapproval of corporal punishment. I'm saying corporal wrong. I realize that now. Corporal. The amount of macroscopic change is dependent on the strength or momentum of the individual microscopic components and their subsequent interactions. End quote. Which is not to say that one of the things that make people people is that we have these big sweeping moral generalizations that we think about ourselves. You say, well, I believe in gay marriage. I don't believe in gay marriage. I believe in corporal punishment. I don't believe in corporal punishment.
Right.
What Richard is tapping into is the idea that these aren't formed by sweeping general like life events. There's no like you don't go through like a life-changing event where suddenly you think that we should have the death penalty.
Right.
99% of the time, it's the microscopic stuff. It's like, well, now that I've gone to a liberal arts college and everyone around me has dissenting opinions, I've learned empathy, so I no longer believe that thing. Or I didn't believe in religion, and now I live in a very religious area, and the microscopic conditions have meant that you are now conditioned to be like more religious. So I think that's in this way, like Riddick is not affected by any of the microscopic changes in what's going on. He is the pure chaos. He is like the pure top level zero moral thing,
Right.
whatever that is. Regardless of the context around him, he seems ultimately unaffected and makes decisions based on this unseeable like moral horizon that he can only perceive. Like even when he tries to kind of like let other characters in a little bit, like he kind of lets Jack's character in a little bit. Like to an extent, the girl pretending to be a guy. Is
Yeah,
Jack.
Jack. It is Jack.
It's like even when Jack starts to like emulate him and sort of that sort of thing, he doesn't like sympathize ever or even like empathize. He's just like, well, I'm still doing what I'm doing. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's a level of, I don't know, it's interesting to write a character like that where every single other story you read ever is about how characters respond to the microscopic changes around them. Right?
Yeah. But so the climax, the end of the film when Carolyn.
I think Carol was right.
I think it is Carolyn.
Yeah. Okay.
When Carolyn is sort of confronts him at the ship, and he's like, "Well, you can just leave with me." And he's basically, she's like, "No, I don't want to," but she's obviously torn between. It's just like she could just fuck off.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of like guilt that she goes through, or the same kind of struggle she goes through at the start of the film, where she's like wanting to just like ditch the passengers and save herself.
Mm-hmm.
But when Riddick, I'm trying to like remember the film. Why does Riddick go and help her again? I'm trying to remember.
I think he knows that if he ends up in space with just the people that are left and not her, he's fucked.
Well, I
isn't
think because it's like he could just leave with just her, and the other two, so Jack and the Muslim guy. I'm gonna look up his name.
I can't remember.
But it's Imam.
Yep.
Played by Keith David.
He's in Chronicles of Riddick too.
He's in the
yeah,
sequel
so
or
weird.
the prequel. Anyway, yeah, it's the decision to go back for them must be driven by something.
Well, must it though? But like, it must be some unseen.
Or it's sort of just like a character development where he's just
But I would only think that, except that in every other film he's exactly the same. So I think he must have some unseen plan that we don't know of.
Right.
Maybe he's like, the more people I have with me, the more bartering chips I have, the more
Sure.
hostages I can take. Like, I think there must be some math going on that we're not seeing. But again, that's what they're like. The cool thing is you're doing the same thing the characters are. Where you're like, why did he help us?
Yeah.
Like that to me is really cool because you're not, even though he's the quote unquote protagonist, you don't get to share an understanding of his worldview.
Well, I think at that point he sort of has like a respect for Carolyn as like a character more so than anyone else, which I think could lend to reason why he goes back. Because when we have, when she's sort of saying, well, no, the reason he goes back is because he's like, are you willing to die for them? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, cool, rock on, I respect that. Let's go.
Well, I guess because he's willing to die for himself. I don't know. It's just
Because then when she dies and he's like, you're not meant to die for me.
oh wait,
He respects her sort of
Well,
her
no.
stance on
disagree.
disagree.
I think what he's doing is he's saying, are you willing to die for them? She says yes. He's like, great, because I'm not. So I need someone around here who is, just in case something goes wrong.
Right, okay.
Maybe that's
to
his
put the blame on.
Well, no, so that there's someone to die, because he's like, I don't want to.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
He's like, I'm only going to go back if I don't have to pay the price.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not the self-sacrifice guy.
But then she sacrifices, quote unquote, herself
Yeah,
for
he's
him.
like-
and
he's
he's
like,
like,
no,
no, what the hell?
You missed the point.
God damn it.
Yeah.
You have to die for them, not me.
I think that's the idea. So like he sees a utility in that, and his math adds up. He's like, well, probably at some point someone's going to have to die to save everyone else. It's not going to be me,
right.
because I'm getting out of here.
Because he still wants to survive, but I
he-
guess he has some baseline understanding. That's why he helps them in the first place.
Yeah.
Because he's like, well, there must be a reason why he helps them and doesn't just murk them all and escape on himself, because he's perfectly capable.
I think again that's part of what's interesting about his character is there's some motivation there that we aren't able to see.
Right.
It's not visible to us, and whether it is that internal.
But he's dumb. He's just one track.
I know.
Like, what is it? Is it sort of commenting on like this idea that, the human condition of having this higher level of intelligence clouds this layer of judgment that you have if you just live on if you look at like birds.
Mhm.
Like, birds are smart. They fly around and shit. I couldn't fly around. I'd get lost. It's like, how do they?
Well, yeah,
They're not troubled by.
they're not paralyzed by our bullshit. Where they're like, should I like?
Should I wear this tie
Should I
or
wear
this
this
tie?
Should I kiss the girl? Like, what do we do? Like,
Do I have money for food, or should I save it?
And because Riddick, I mean, it's interesting with the parallels with animals and stuff because he is very primal in that way.
Yeah.
But he seems to understand something about the nature of life that we don't, as regular people who are, conflicted and paralyzed and complicated by these things. He has access to something primal that we don't because we do have all that shit going on.
Right.
And whether it's that he's in a better place or he's not, I don't think the films are there to be interested in that question. What they're interested in is if that person did actually exist, what would that look like in this abstract setting?
And like every character in this film kind of has some element of like humanness that just like kind of usually in the end gets them killed. Some element of just like something holding them back, which the film doesn't make like a moral comment on what's holding them back. It just presents it and says they die.
It's kind of where my meta reading goes to.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, definitely. It does definitely say these people are being held back by something, and it doesn't comment on it in the film. But I think in the meta text, it kind of.
Well, I think,
It
you can kind of use, like the art historian guy, he's sort of just fixated on these relics, and he's, he wants to keep the booze and stuff like that. And that's kind of like his thing.
Yeah.
You've got Imam he's weird, because for me, it was a case of like his sons, who I think as metaphorical sons, they're quite naive.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of just like, they kind of just run around and get killed.
Whereas
I don't think he is. He's very much sort of leading them.
well, because he doesn't really he doesn't believe in God exactly. Like so this is kind of where I think the film is really interesting because Riddick has a line at the start where he's like, what is he saying? I wrote it down. Let me find it.
I think Jack is like, Jack is an element of just self self-dislike.
Well,
You know,
yeah, I mean,
she pretends to be a man because so that she thinks people would respect her more.
yeah, kind of. I mean, so Riddick has a line I think reflects that idea perfectly, where someone's like, "Well, do you believe in God or whatever?" He's like, "Yeah, of course, I absolutely believe in God, and I fucking hate him or whatever."
Right.
Which is like a cool edgy line or whatever.
It is very cool. In
But
the
I
movie.
think it speaks to like the film, what the film is interested in, and like and what the Riddick series is interested in. That's kind of like why Jack is the weird. So Jack turns up again in Chronicles of Riddick.
Which is the prequel.
Well, it's technically the sequel to this. If you
This
this is
this meant
technically
to
the
be
prequel.
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be. It doesn't matter what order you read them in, they still work.
So Chronicles of Riddick is just a sequel.
It's actually a sequel, but they make
Okay.
it into a prequel in the director's cut of this for some reason. I
What
don't know.
in Chronicles?
No, in the director's cut of Pitch Black, they
this-
make Chronicles of Riddick into a prequel.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, so if you watch a
What?
certain version of this,
How do you do that?
there's a flashback at the
How
start
do
where you
make
learn
a director's cut
dude, I don't know
a prequel for a film that comes out after the director's cut.
because the director's cut came out after
After
Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh.
So weird.
What the is it just he had a bunch of was it just like he was just like off his rockers and like he made Pitch Black into this dumb high concept and they shaved off all of the high concept and then just like he was just like, no, put it back, it's now relevant.
I think what happened is Vin Diesel had a really cool idea for a character. Toy was like, I can write that into a really cool thriller film. And then they went, we're both sci-fi nerds. Let's make a big sci-fi epic, much
Right.
like Lord of the Rings stuff, but for sci-fi. Then they went, what if it's a prequel? For whatever reason, doesn't matter.
Fair enough.
So, but that's kind of what I'm interested in. Is like this film definitely examines people like okay, so the people who live at the end are the people who are kind of a little bit okay with who they are. Like they're not fully actualized yet, but they seem to be allowed to live because they've at least owned some of their own shit. Like as you said, the script has no concern for morality. What it cares about is this idea of like, and I'm gonna get really meta, but this idea of like symbolic castration.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Stay with me. I'll explain. Just stay with me. So to become a survivor like Riddick, you have to be able to forego the. As we've said, he's like the perfect moral zero. He's not bound by these concepts of like, I am a husband, I am a employee, I am a son, I am a daughter. He's not bound by those things. He's fully castrated from like symbolic requirements. He is just a fucking animal. He is primal. There's nothing about him that ties him to the symbolic nature of living, right? Because that's our entire world is like symbolic association, right? Money works because we believe it does. The police have authority because we treat them like they do. It's all symbolic, right? In this context, Zizek talks about symbolic castration and describes the idea of individuals separating themselves from the symbolic. So the act of saying, I am not those things. I am not a father. I am not a mother.
Some spicy
Yeah, we're going to get to some Zizek shit right here. So, and I'll give you the quote from Matthew Sharp talking on Zizek and Lacan, and then I'll try and explain it a bit. Quote, everything turns, according to Lacanian theory, on whether this loss constitutes a violent humiliation for the child, or whether, as in Hegel's account of lordship and bondage, its resolution involves the founding of a pact between the parties, bound by the solemnification of mutually agreed law. End quote. That's Matthew Sharp. So what he means by that is, when you go through that symbolic castration, so say for instance you go, well, I'm more than just someone's husband, I am my own person. The most common example and the one that they refer to is the Oedipus complex, right? So when you're a kid, at some point you go through the symbolic castration to say, I am separate from my mother, and you no longer view your father as a threat. That was Freud's theory. We've kind of like moved on a little bit from that.
A little bit.
But at some point, every parent and child goes through this where there's a symbolic castration where they suddenly realize they're two independent people and they're not your mother, they're just a person that happens to also be your mother.
Right.
And the relationship changes forever.
Yeah.
Right? And so what Zizek is talking about here and what Matthew Sharp is identifying is this idea that there are two ways it can happen. One where it's like there is trauma that is associated with it. So it has to happen through some traumatic means. Like there's something terrible that happens that forces this thing. So like, you know,
divorce,
like your parents get divorced, or like,
Yeah.
you know, one of your parents goes to jail, or they have like a drug problem, or like
Right.
something that affects you so deeply that it's separation by trauma. The other version of that is like a mutually agreed pact where at some point, most people go through this at some point, like during your adolescence or like young adulthood, you and your parents kind of come to an understanding that like they're still your parent, but you kind of have your own shit going on.
Right.
And you kind of come to this weird non-spoken agreement where it's
Yeah.
kind of like, and in doing so, you're able to separate yourself from that symbolic association, in a way that feels healthy. It's not always as clean as that, but generally speaking, it usually takes one party longer to adjust than the other. It's usually the parents.
Usually the parents,
there's this idea that like when you can achieve that, it's really healthy for you and it lets you like actualize a bit more. So an example of like a traumatic version of this is Riddick telling Fry about Jones being like a heroin addict. That's like a fairly traumatic separation. Versus Jack, who's allowed to realize that they're free to kind of save themselves under Riddick's influence.
Right.
So I think similarly, like the last sequence as they're racing through the darkness to the ship, for me, that points to this whole idea. So like, as the kind of eclipse goes down on like they have the power cells trying to get to the ship and like all the monsters are coming or whatever, there's an idea in Lacanian theory that Zizek's all about, which is the idea of salvation. So in the Bible, salvation is like you come to God or whatever. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if you are religious, say like you're born and raised like super Catholic and super Christian, you have that moment where you realize that like, oh, religion's made up and I don't necessarily believe in that. You have that symbolic castration. Zizek talks about that as being the revelation. The revelation is knowing oneself. So for me, it's interesting, the symbolism in this film is like they're going from like, you know, they're racing the darkness to save the light, right? It's like they're trying to get to that salvation, and the people that survive are the people that get to experience that actualization. There's some just interesting parallels there. And I think the idea is that when you haven't achieved symbolic castration, you're in the literal dark, and in this film that kills you, right? So if you can go through the trauma of the separation, you can achieve the salvation. So but then I get confused with this because then Riddick is like believing in God, but he's anti-God, like all that shit. But I guess for me, like what I'm interested in with the film and its symbolism is that being the case. And if we think about that kind of last sequence as being the people that escape the darkness and get onto the ship and survive are the people that have that symbolic castration, they have that separation. But at what cost? Like Jack in the next film becomes basically Riddick. Like she becomes this fucking killer. She ends up in like the world's biggest like supermax prison.
Right.
Right? Imam stops believing in God altogether and basically starts living a lie, has a new family on a new planet, and never speaks about his old family again.
Right.
And Riddick, who's the one that causes all of this, is the only one that seems unchanged because he is the perfect moral zero. So are we supposed to believe that the only way to true salvation is to continue stripping back symbolism until we are just fucking animals? But that's not society. That's Riddick on a desert planet killing fucking, womp rats with his T-84 and, frying them on a stove and living like fucking Arthur Morgan in Red Dead 2 on the fucking range. Like,
it's very specific.
I just think about this a lot. I don't know. There's something about that is so interesting. Like, we're supposed to go through this constant separation when we go, I'm not just these things. But if you go so far as to be like, well, but police aren't police, they're just people and money isn't real. Like, if you go so far, society doesn't exist and it breaks down.
Well, so I think, looking at the people who live, we can obviously see sort of what happens to people who make it through that point of salvation, but they're not Riddick. So they come out the other side a bit messed up.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the people who don't make it through, who die, in particular the people who die on the path to along the journey when the lights are out, because there is one death of what's his name when he's putting the bodies away and he just gets like sucked into the hole. I think that death is weird because him as a character, he's not very well fleshed out. Let me get his name real. Hassan, Captain Tom
Could
Mitchell?
Could be
Sam Surrey. Anyway, that guy. Wikipedia is failing me.
The guy who dies for the creatures first.
Yeah, he just sort of. He doesn't really have much of a character beyond the fact that he's Australian, and he just sort of buries a bunch of bodies. Like you don't really get much of what his character is compared to the other characters. The second person to go is Sharon, who I'm pretty sure is another Australian, and she, she's like eager to get to safety, and she runs too early. She gets chomped by the flying boys. Her sort of, I guess, her contribution to the story is really she doesn't really think ahead, and she takes a solar-powered vehicle when they're trying to run, when they know that sunlight is running out. I think that is like that eagerness to sort of like, all right, we gotta go now, all right, we're gonna take this vehicle because it works, because I can fix it, all right, we're gonna go, all right, cool. Oh, I'm dead. We've got, who else do we have after that? We have Mr. Collecty Boy, I mean, all through this, like the sons are dying, the sons of Imam are dying. I don't really know what they are as characters.
I think it's supposed to be
For
like
me, look, it's like don't at me, but I kind of see them as Imam is a shepherd and they are the sheep. If you want to take like a biblical reference, he's the Moses. You know, he's
Yeah.
guiding a group of people, and not all of them make it.
well, I mean,
Spoiler.
you could also talk about it as being his belief in God waning, like because
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
3 sons on the planet.
Yeah.
The 3 sons, they die as the film goes on. Darkness falls. He loses his faith in God. It's like, I don't know. There's some clear parallels there.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a metaphor there that I swear is not sacrilege or
It's-
like racist.
well-
It's that kind of thing where like they are very much coded Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like it's a bit yikes in this.
Yeah, but
film.
you have to code people with something.
Yeah.
So
So he's fine, but the second major death is his name's Paris. That's a really dumb name
Don't-
because
okay.
he's like, I wanted to die in France,
Oh shit. Okay.
and
that's funny though.
it is a bit funny.
Yeah.
But he's sort of like his death is so dumb, and it's one of those. It's like a really dumb like sort of like horror film trope where it's just like, you know, in any other film you'd be like, what are you doing? You're being such an idiot. Duh, if you just stayed with the group you'd be fine. But I don't know why, but this film, it manages to like not seem like, oh, what is he doing? He's such an idiot. It's just like, no, that's like exactly what you expect from him as a character.
It's because it does a really good job of like, I don't know, the writing with the characters is like nuanced in a way that's really weird, where you know immediately who they are, but there's enough depth to them where you're like, I understand their motivations. I don't know
Yeah.
how they do it. There's like, I don't know, it's really well written.
And they also use his death as just like very good sort of, I don't know, window dressing to the thriller aspect of the film.
Mhm.
When he sort of blows the flame and it's just like he's surrounded. You're just like, oh, it kind of takes your mind off the fact that he's a goddamn moron. You're just like, that's a
Like,
really
oh,
cool shot.
So much of that in this film, I'm like, dude, that's shot really well.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think you're totally right. It definitely like,
And then, you know, when we've got the Merc guy, his death is because he's so eager to screw over Riddick
mhm.
that he just like falls over his own legs
Yeah.
of how eager he is. And just like, you know, him with the shotgun just like firing wildly. He's so keen to you know, reap the rewards, get the babes, shoot the
Right.
guns. He's like the true blue American. And he doesn't get killed by Riddick. Riddick's just like, see you later, bitch.
yeah, we let him die,
Yeah.
and
He's
that's
just like, remember, stay in the light.
there's such an element to
I'll see
that
you later.
where I think it's I think that's why the film doesn't have such moral compunction that other films like this would have, where it's like the good people live. I think it's the people that just aren't trying to fuck other people over, like people that just maintain that moral zero, or at
Right.
least try to, or approximate it, or they learn to. Which is such a weird like idea for a film that is as like high concept as this sci-fi wise. But I don't know. I was trying to think about like a takeaway from this, because with all that said about the like Zizek's kind of stuff and the Lacanian theory and all that, like I think
Well, actually, sorry, to finish my point,
Yeah,
at
of
the end
course.
of it, Carolyn dies.
Mhm.
Like that's that's a huge twist.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see it coming. Like it
I thought
happens.
she's the
You know,
most sympathetic character.
You know, and at the end when Riddick is like he sort of he doesn't immediately take off, the word escapes me. He's sitting there and like my brain was just like, oh, is he gonna be like, oh, we have to go save Carolyn? But I like checked the time, I was just like, no, there's like 3 minutes left.
Mhm.
And he's like, no, he just wants to burn a bunch of them.
Yeah.
It's
He's
just like he doesn't care that
Well,
Carolyn
No,
went.
he's
just
like, I need to kill a bunch so we don't get taken down as we take off.
Right.
Like that's his thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which
Anyway,
is
that's it's just the fact that at the end, like, you know, similar to all these other characters where it's just like their eagerness or like their desire to want things. It's like Carolyn's desire to save everyone is ultimately her downfall.
right. Whereas it's for some reason Riddick's complete lack of want and his operation entirely on need seems to be what saves him.
Right.
But what life is that? And I think that's kind of the question at the end. Is it's like, well, yeah, you can't do that, but without the symbolic associations of life, you don't like you're not in. There's no indulgence. There's nothing you're enjoying, and is that something that you should aspire to or not? And the films never ultimately answer that question. Doesn't matter which Riddick film you watch, but it is an interesting question to raise in such a kind of action-heavy, kind of quote unquote fun, you know, rompy sort of thriller horror.
Kind of fun.
Well, like kind of like you
Fun
know,
at
like
times.
yeah, like I don't know that's kind of that's an interesting philosophical concept that's hard to tap into in most films, and I think it is best suited to films that aren't complicated plot-wise. Like, it is a very simple story that manages to execute with nuance about those concepts. So I'm always impressed by this film.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations for this week?
Oh, shit. Oh, yeah, I've been playing Far Cry 5
Yeah.
this week because I was sick one day, and then I was like, I'm going to download and play Far Cry 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good. I haven't played a Far Cry game since, like, 2.
Mm-hmm.
I played a bit of 3.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely, like, they're very political now. Like, this one's set in, like, Montana. And they've done a really good job with the way that they do the villains. I always thought, like Far Cry villains are fun, but it's always really contrived, the way that they, like, present them and the way that they put them in the space, just so they can, like, give opportunities for them to just, like, talk to the camera, because that's, like, the best part of the Far Cry villains. And in this game, they actually do a good job of being like, this is why we're going to make the villain talk to you. You're like, oh, I get this. Like, I've actually been captured. It's not just some contrived bullshit into, oh, he's there and talking to you. It's just like, no, I've done a bad thing and I got caught.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must.
I
Okay.
must listen to the monologue.
Yeah. And then I got to do a thing and continue on my merry way, blowing shit up.
No, I like it.
So it's a fun one.
I've been playing a lot of Sekiro because I was also sick. And that game is really, really hard.
When we're sick, we just play
We're
video
sick,
games.
boys! It's the only time we have time to play games.
Exactly.
Fuck, that is a good video game. I'm like nearly done, but fuck, it's hard.
Yep.
Definitely enjoying it. I think we'll do like another episode on it because now that I'm nearly done, I think I have a much better grasp of what they were trying to do. The game's brilliant. The camera's shit. I have so many gripes about it.
Fuck the camera.
Terrible.
Get that shit out of here.
Don't be fucking adding me about how you finished it 25 times. You're fucking frame perfecting the whole thing. The camera's bad. Fuck it off.
We don't care.
Otherwise, where can people find us?
You call me mid-drink. Facebook.
At DCM Works Social.
You call me mid-drink again. Why did I drink again?
I don't know.
That was my fault.
That was on you.
Yeah, YouTube.
YouTube.com/DCMworks.
Twitter.
At DCM_works.
Patreon.
Patreon.com/DCMworks. I was going to say, before we get to Patreon, I have a video up at the moment that I think you guys will really enjoy. It's a breakdown of The Same by Horror Show.
Woo. It's a good one.
It's one of my... I made that in,
made it in
a single day.
Yeah.
I got up at 4:30 in the morning and I finished it at like 8 p.m. I don't know what... I couldn't sleep and I was just like, I had this idea and I like woke up and I just did
sure.
it. And I was like, that was my Sunday.
I've had days like that.
So I'm really proud of that one. You can go check it out on
Some
YouTube.
of my best work is from days like that.
Honestly, I'm really proud of that. But our Patreon starts at $3 a month. We view it more as a subscription than a donation. You get access to a bunch of behind-the-scenes content. You actually get access to the post-show of this podcast, which we're going to record in about 10 minutes from now if you're watching this live, where we respond to comments, talk about stuff that doesn't really fit in the scope of the show, and sometimes we just talk shit and answer email.
It's usually that.
Yeah. Usually we're just like, we've had enough drinks that we're fun.
Yeah.
So we can just shoot the shit and hang out. And that goes up in both a video format and an audio. So if you prefer to listen to it on audio, you can actually go to the Patreon and then you can. There's an RSS feed you can plug into your podcast app. So if you are a patron, I encourage you to do that. It's the best way to get access to that content. It's like 65 plus hours behind the scenes content. You guys know this, but you also get discounts to my book. Now that camera's done. Fuck me. Well, we're gonna
No cameras.
Gotta end the show. If you want to follow us individually, I'm at DCMI Pie.
I'm at Literal
We'll
Citrus.
see you guys next week.